one video is 4 tips for switching industries. Switching careers to the private equity industry can be difficult. Here are some helpful tips for making the transition to private equity more smoothly. This is intended for those taking the Certified Private Equity Professional designation. Step 1. Reeducation. This means going back to school for some of you. Consider enrolling in a full-time MBA program at a well-known business school or other graduate degree. Some of you may have already obtained a Master's in Business Administration, and if you have, that's great. That's a good starting block, but for those of you who haven't, it's pretty standard in the industry to have an MBA or a similar advanced degree. And next, we'll go to top schools are preferred but not mandatory. This is pretty standard for the private equity industry. They look at the top schools because they know they produce the top students, and they give them the skill set necessary to compete in the private equity industry. If you don't come from a top school, you're gonna have to make up some ground in other ways, which may be interning or working at a smaller private equity firm. Some get into mid-market or smaller level private equity firms, which is a good way to get your foot in the door and then try to work your way up to the top tier private equity firms if that's your goal. You have to prepare for a pay cut and some time before you're able to enter the industry. This means looking ahead and realizing, well, I may have worked in investment banking for this long, but if I'm really going to go into private equity, I'm going to have to start all over again. Even if you've worked your way up in investment banking or at a different firm, just working in a corporate finance, you're going to have to get used to the idea that you might have to take a cut in your pay, which might not be that significant because starting salary is pretty competitive in private equity. But you also have to schedule some time where you're going to have to, well, in the previous example, you might have to go back to school, which is going to cost money and it's going to cost time. And you just have to be prepared for the worst. It may take you a while to land a job, but if you stay persistent, it's a good chance you'll be able to succeed. Another tip for re-education is to read about the industry. This is really important. The more you learn about the industry, the more familiar you're going to be with it, the more chances are going to rise to you because you're going to be attending conferences, you're going to be learning in every way more about the private equity industry, become more familiar with it, be able to talk to other people about it, and you'll be able to recognize those opportunities when they come around. Step 2, designations. If you're really serious about working in private equity, you should consider enrolling in a professional designation program. This goes without saying, considering most of the people watching this video are already enrolled or considering enrolling in the Certified Private Equity Professional designation. This will demonstrate that you are serious about private equity, teach you about the inner workings of the industry. It also just gives you a good background to the industry so that you are able to feel comfortable when you walk in the door of a private equity firm or when you're going in for that interview. Consider other training programs and long conferences. I say long conferences because a one-day conference on valuation or something is probably not going to be that useful for you because you can't really put that on a resume. But it's always good to learn more about the industry. But I'm thinking more of training programs that will help boost your resume and show that you're serious about private equity and that you're a competitive applicant. Focus on those training programs that give you face time with private equity professionals. This is important because you not only get to talk to private equity professionals and get an idea of the industry directly from them, you also may be presented with an opportunity to intern with them or to work with them if they feel like you have the drive and they feel like they have the need for somebody like you. Look for intensive private equity specific training programs at various institutes and universities. I know business schools a lot of times will invite different organizations and private equity alum. A lot of people that graduate from business schools will go back and talk there. That's always good. And different institutes actually offer like at least week-long training seminars where you can go and learn more about private equity. And it's always a good idea. to boost your knowledge and your just your different connections to the industry. Networking. This is a big one. You want to get into the industry running and go and network as much as possible. Some opportunities for that are conferences and trade shows. As I mentioned before, trying to get face time with private equity professionals, but also just pretty much anyone that's at these conferences is going to at least have some connection to private equity, whether it's with service providers or recruiters. Anybody who's going to be at these conferences are usually interested in speaking with pretty much anybody, so you'll be a good candidate for that. Other opportunities, LinkedIn and professional networking sites. They kind of get a bad rap because there is a lot of spamming on these sites. There's a lot of people who don't really care about private equity or not that interested, taking up a lot of the conversation there. But it's always important to get your name out there and start connecting with people, and who knows, you might be able to learn something. You might be able to get a job through this. So it's always good to try all different avenues. Another option is emailing and calling private equity professionals. Cold calling is pretty difficult. A lot of times private equity firms will kind of resent this because you're wasting their time. But if you email and call private equity professionals that you've met either through conferences, through different associates, maybe a former colleague, that kind of thing, where you can get to know them and talk more to them, see how you can position yourself best to get into the industry. That'll be great for you. Informational interview. This is pretty standard in financial institutions. A lot of times they're interested in meeting new candidates that are really serious, and if you know somebody in the industry, you can probably get an informational interview where you just go in and talk to them and learn more about the business. Another option is reaching out to recruiters. Some recruiters do charge fees to connect you with private equity firms, but they're still a good resource, and they're still really knowledgeable about the industry. So if you have a chance to talk to them, network with them, get your name out there, it's always great. This is just a solution I've seen work for buying a private equity professional lunch. A lot of times, if you know somebody in the industry, or if you just have somebody that you specifically want to work in their firm, if you are really interested in investing in energy and you have some background in that, they might want to pick your brain while you pick their brain about just different things in the private equity industry. So just offer to buy them lunch, and that's just a great way to network. And the fourth step, distribute your resume. Make sure your resume is visible. This is important because a lot of people will make up a great resume and be a little bit too shy to give it to people because they're afraid of getting rejected. They're afraid that they're not qualified enough. But it's really easy to say that, and it's a little bit harder to just go out there and be bold and try to engage people in the private equity industry. So a firm may be looking for someone with your particular skill set and experiences. You want to make that search as easy as possible. They have your resume on file. That's always great because they might not need you at the moment, but they're going to look longer down the line, and they're going to say, wow, I really wanted to hire this guy back then. Didn't have a spot for him, but now we do, and he's on the top of the list. So another option is posting your resume online. As before, there are a lot of sites that just gets kind of lost in all of the different spam and everything online, but it's good to get your resume out there and use different job websites. There's a lot of financial focused ones. I know some private equity focused job websites that'll be good to put your resume on, and yeah, it's just great to have it online. Consider your qualifications and target firms. This I'm going to harp on a lot for people in this program. You want to look at where these firms invest and try to position yourself best by emphasizing your own expertise. And if you have something that can really contribute, this could be by investment area. If they invest in a specific industry or sector, and you have some knowledge of this, or you have some past experience in this, you want to really highlight that and make sure that's very visible on your resume, and make sure it's something that you talk about in your interviews and when you're networking. Geographical location. There's emerging markets. India, China come to mind first, but also just other countries around the world that private equity firms are trying to get into, but maybe they don't have somebody who can head this up, who's familiar with the region, if you have some experience back there, and who knows the language, knows the people, knows what ideas are going to work, what they're going to be receptive to product-wise, and what firms are going to succeed in that environment. Also, relevant qualifications. If you have something that's going to be particularly useful to these firms, if they're really trying to improve their image and you have public relations experience, they're going to want to hire somebody who is going to make them look good. And if you have any, really just any of your qualifications that you think will be useful and that this firm could use. So that involves researching these firms and looking at this buyout firm and thinking, how can I position myself best to be appealing to them? So you're trying to attract these people and you're trying to market yourself, and that's really important. But this all goes to distributing your resume and make sure you're out there networking and just improving yourself to be as qualified as you can and as attractive a candidate as you can be. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.